Obviously, finals week. Heard you over talking to some other guys about how the lads have been. What's it like as a coach? Like, you're in charge for this tournament. What's it like going into a tournament now, and you've been the head coach, now you're going into a final?
I think the important thing is not to really put the final on a pedestal. I think there's a case of sometimes you can overemphasise things, and actually the final is another game. I know that's a cliche. It is another game. I just said now that it should be used as a celebration. You take all the pressure off playing in a final. You use it as a celebration and enjoy every single minute of it. And that goes for coaching staff as well. And we have to be mindful of managing environments around that, and not putting too much pressure on the players, and ensuring that they can enjoy it and they don't getting dragged around everywhere and feeling like they need to tense up because it's a final. They shouldn't. They should just enjoy the celebration, and play with absolute freedom. Does
it mean a bit more of after the rocky start that you had? And we've spoken to a few of the guys, and they've said that sort of having to pretty much play knockout cricket for most of the tournament. Does it mean a little bit more? And the Hampshire game, you're able to come back and win from what seemed like a preposterous position. So does it mean that little bit more that you've been able to get through to the final?
It does. I mean, when you start to have to play knockout cricket early on in the group stages, it actually takes the pressure off. You're playing a final essentially every single time, and you go out there and you play with that freedom, because it is a shot to nothing, and it's a case of it's one more game. We have to approach it in that way. And that's the danger, is you can suddenly look at how much you've built up in terms of the 5 wins in a row. You get through the group stages and winning the quarter-final and the semi-final. You feel you've built it all up, and then one game could suddenly knock it down like a house of cards. But that's the feeling that we've got to not have in our dressing room, and that's the thing that certainly us as support staff have got to work really hard on making sure that the game is not on a pedestal, and it will be what will be. But as long as we go out, we play to our strengths, we do what we want to do, then so be it.
So what's you turn around? What's impressed you most about this team and the way they've come together for this 50 over tournament so far?
So team-wise, we had a very strong squad at the start of the year. We walked into this campaign. We had 2 overseas players. We had a very experienced team: Alex Blake, Joe Denley, Dan Stevens. There was probably a bit of expectation actually on us. Actually, as we went through, we lost so many players through injury, mainly batters, which is a bit strange. And so actually, the resilience of all the players to take on different roles. So Joey Everson, for example, going up having to open the batting, would be one area that I would highlight. Coming in, getting 100 at Glamorgan. Having been asked to open the batting when it's a bit of an unusual situation for him, certainly coming into a new club as well. And so there was a lot of upheaval in those early group stages because of those injuries. Almost every game we were having to change and mess around with the makeup of the team to compensate for particularly a lack of batting actually. So that's impressed me a lot, the adaptability into roles. And then going forwards, once we get on that role, it's then that ability and that belief to believe you can win from any situation. And the Hampshire game was probably a good case in point, as well as the Yorkshire game here where he needs 6 off the last ball. There was absolute belief we were going to win that game.
And do you think that ability to recover and come back from those situations going into the final, do you think that's giving you an edge in terms of, you had that shaky start at the beginning of the tournament, you've come back with the momentum, and then you're going into the major final, and I know there's been a gap, but coming back after that gap, do you still feel that momentum, that sense of something is still there?
So it's had a meeting today before training and spoke about exactly that. Suddenly with 10 days, I'll take you back to the semi-final actually. I spoke about it at Hampshire. The fact that Hampshire had a 10-day break. They won the groups, they won the group stages so convincingly. They obviously skipped the quarterfinals and straight into the semis. There was a big gap for them and actually it's a momentum killer. Whereas actually we had good momentum because we were on quarter final, went straight to the semi, and had really good momentum. That was something we were conscious of, and so in the dressing room now we've spoken about that momentum and how we actually engage with that again. And sometimes that's quite difficult. We try and replicate it here in cricket situations, but we've done a few things off the field. So we've had some motivational videos made for the players to try to re-engage with that. Music is a big thing in our dressing room through this campaign. So there's been certain tag songs that are really associating themselves with wins in particular. And so the combination of the kind of music, the footage, is really helping to engage the players back into that frame of mind of where they were through those important group stage games and actually in the semi-final.
Sort of moving away from the final, obviously Jordan Cox has been recognised by England with a well-deserved call-up for the Pakistan T20s. Obviously not been with you guys for this tournament, but you've seen him come through the club. And what was your emotions and what was the feeling around the place when word got through that he'd got the call-up?
Any time anyone gets a call-up in your squad for the first time or whenever, or a recall to play national team cricket, the emotions are very strong, because you see how hard players work, you see how talented they are. They become an inspiration to you as a player. You want to. That's ultimately what your dream is to play international cricket, is to play in finals, play in those big games. And so there's an overwhelming feeling of joy and happiness and excitement for him, because it's a great opportunity to go over in Pakistan, flat wickets, and he's the world's at his feet really. He's had quite a fast journey really. I arrived here in 2019 and he just come back from an under-19 World Cup. Was unsure whether he was going to play in the first team. He ended up opening the batting, did pretty well, and then started breaking into the T20 side, and kind of the rest is history really. And he had a great 100 campaign, and he's really kind of built that momentum. We talk about momentum here. He's built that personal momentum for him, and it's resulted in getting a call-up. His challenge now is to take the opportunity when it comes.
You mentioned there the opportunity. You guys have made the call to basically give the squad that have got you to the final the chance to represent the club. It's quite self-explanatory, but are you able to take us a little bit more behind it? Like, was there any chats with any of the players coming back from 100 about whether they might be available to play, or were you always really just focused on this group of guys?
No, it was made. The decision was made very early on that was going to be the case. Actually, through the latter half of the group stages, I sat down with Paul Downton and laid out my stance that if we were to get to the final, this is where I feel it should go. He was in agreement. Conversations with Matt Walker again through the kind of latter stages of the quarterfinals and semi-finals. He was in agreement as well. So it was a very early on decision, and a lot of the players actually, Fred Klassen in particular, kind of phoned up and said, look, I don't expect to be considered for the final. I don't think it's right. So all the players are on board with that.
Is that quite a pleasing thing then, that you've got your senior players on board, and that it speaks to a good culture at the club, that you reward players for their hard work, their efforts, and it's a cup final. It's like you say, it's one of the biggest things that a player can play in. It's like, does that please you as a coach, sort of seeing that there's a culture there, that the senior players don't just expect the younger guys to come in and play the hardest, and they just get to come in and take all the rewards at the end? No,
I think it is a reflection on the culture and each individual at the club, as to how they view themselves and also their teammates around them. And the fact is that a lot of these players who are playing in this final on Saturday would have been guys who have been in and around the bench last year in the T20 final. And so that feeling of that, you deserve your rewards. Everything you get, you work hard, and you reap the rewards. So very pleasing from the senior players.
And obviously one of your senior players is Darren Stevens, and we know that at the end of the season he's leaving Kent. How has it been having him around this campaign, and how do you reflect on him as an individual, being at Kent for so long and being almost part of their history?
Yeah, it's sort of end of a long journey. Darren and I were signed at the same time, the same year here, so I had the pleasure of not only playing with him for 6-7 years, but also rooming with him for quite a decent amount of time. So I know him very well. You know what he can do on the field, which is extraordinary. And this campaign has again underlined kind of he writes his own scripts. The fact that he started in the tournament, then got injured, an injury which on the face of it looked like that was going to be him done. But again, writes his own scripts, back he comes, and plays 2 instrumental knocks against Yorkshire or against Lancashire and Leicester, and then obviously in the semi-final against Hampshire on a really tough pitch. His experience really came through, and didn't panic, and took it down to the last over, or the penultimate over, and he knew who was going to take down in that over to win the game. There was no doubt if he was there at the end we were going to win, and that's what he brings, is that experience, that calmness. In the field as well, although he's not the most mobile, he's still good enough, but it's that experience to say, look, hang on, let's just do this and this in this period, it's going to be all right. Whereas maybe some of the younger players might be a little bit more edgy, might try something a bit over ambitious, might start leaking runs and suddenly the game gets away. So that experience has been key through this campaign.
And just finally, obviously Saturday, Trent Bridge, big occasion. You're playing against Lancashire, who I don't know whether you can tell from my accent, but I'm a fan of them. What do you think of your opposition going into the final? Obviously you beat them here at Canterbury. How much confidence does that give you going into it, or is it a fresh, clean slate when it comes to the final?
To a certain extent, it's a fresh, clean slate. It's a new game, neutral venue. We will obviously take the positives in the fact that we beat them in the group stages here. They're a fairly traditional setup in terms of how they approach their one-day cricket. They set a strong platform up front and look to power through the middle. I anticipate they will add in some of their 100 players to that team, and to be honest, it doesn't really bother us. They played here with probably a bowler short in the group stages, so I anticipate they'll probably play a spinner of some description, either Hartley or Parkinson. But like I say, it doesn't really affect us in terms of how we have the outlook of the game, or whether we say it's not fair or whatever. We deal with what's in front of us on the day.
Well, good luck for the final, and as a Lancashire fan, I hope you lose. But thank you very much for your time.
No worries.